With 35 other children, Emma, Norman, and Ray are three highly intelligent orphans who live happily and in a structured environment at the Gracefield house. At breakfast, we first meet Mom Isabella, who shows patience and care for the children. After breakfast, the children are shown demonstrating their intellectual prowess in a series of tests, which Emma, Norman, and Ray all pass with distinction. The youngsters then play tag on the wide green fields and among the dense forest trees that surround Gracefield. Norman seems to wander outside the field with nobody able to find him. Emma unintentionally stumbles upon the outer limits of the forest and notices him gazing at the low-level fence at the border. There is a discussion about what the outside world must be like. The kids take turns daydreaming about that fated day when they are adopted and finally leave Gracefield. One of the younger children, Connie, is actually being adopted that very day. After a day of play and fun, he says goodbye to his fellow friends and is taken away by Mom Isabella. During cleanup, Emma finds Connie's beloved stuffed animal, Little Bunny. Realizing that Connie can't possibly move into her new foster home without her best friend, Emma attempts to return the doll to her. The two, Emma and Norman, travel to the gate, where a truck is waiting in the stone hallway. Emma believes Connie will eventually find the bunny, but when she goes to put it in the back, she finds Connie's lifeless body. She and Norman scramble to stifle their screams of terror as the monsters discuss how the kids are being raised as high-quality meat for wealthy and powerful monsters, as they hear voices from another room and flee to safety under the truck, horrified. Mom receives a call from one of the monsters telling her to make sure the delivery of the premium products happens quickly and without incident. Emma and Norman's whole world has been upended when they learn that the Gracefield house is actually a farm that raises humans as food for the demons, revealing the horrifying truth of their existence. They eventually escape the corridor by running back to the house. At night, Norman plans to leave the house, but Emma is reluctant to leave the other children there to perish. Isabella finds the stuffed animal that Emma had left beside the truck when they fled. Emma can hardly conceal her look of terror when she hears and sees Mom for the first time since their discovery. But Norman assures her that they have made it and should stay normal as Mom is unaware who put the bunny there. When they are playing, Emma and Norman agree that the safest way to get away is through the forest, but when they cross the short fence, they soon come across a huge, seamless concrete wall. Things become even more difficult when a little girl gets lost and Mom only needs to glance at her watch to know exactly where to find her. So they realize that security is actually rather lax because they have some sort of tracking device implanted somewhere in their bodies. As Emma and Norman are leaving the house, Mom asks them directly if they were at the gate the previous night. They cheerfully respond, "Of course not, that's against the rules," and continue on, but Mom is clearly suspicious. Back at the house, while having a private moment of grief for Connie, Mom unexpectedly appears before Emma, wondering why she's been less cheerful recently. Ray ends up bailing them both out when he rings the dinner bell. Once they are both by themselves once more, neither can contain their utter horror any longer. They must leave immediately. All they need is a plan. They have 2 months before the next child is abducted, so their escape plan involves hiding some tablecloths near the wall, which they'll use to make rope when the time comes. Unfortunately, someone followed them to the wall. It's their friend Ray, who wants to know what's up. They tell him, and to their surprise, he believes it all because he knows Norman well enough to know he'd never lie about something like this. While Ray is willing, Emma's conviction that all 37 children will be fleeing poses a significant obstacle to the plan. Later, Isabella presents Carol, a new baby, and Sister Crone, her adult assistant. While Emma, Norman, and Ray are putting the finishing touches on what is already appearing to be a futile escape plot, Crone is making plans to take her boss's position. When instructed to think like the enemy and finding a place where a tracking device could be implanted, she examines Carol, the newest addition to the farm, and discovers a red bump behind her ear. They agree that it's too risky to try to destroy their ear trackers because it could set off the alarm, so they concentrate on getting everyone out first. Emma instructs the children to work on improving their physical condition, while Norman and Ray teach them how to survive. The group chooses to pass the escape off as a fun game of tag. Unfortunately, Sister Crone is suspicious of their plans and wants to send them away before their scheduled departure date, so she can accuse Isabella of breaking protocol and seize control later. When Norman and Ray put the puzzle together to discover there is a traitor among them, Isabella assures Crone that if she cooperates, she'll have a child of her own. And as a result, Crone secretly resents her and decides to depose her rather than being promoted. Meanwhile, Emma, Norman, and Ray continue practicing their escape under the guise of a game of tag. This time, however, the team is led by older kids rather than everyone on their own, and the trio suspects Gilda or Don to be the traitor. Later that day, the trio tells two other kids, Don and Gilda, their secret, though Norman chooses not to tell them that Connie is dead. Gilda and Don ultimately decide that an attempt at escape is the only option when Norman fabricates the claim that the children who fled were victims of human trafficking, because the cold reality might simply be too much to bear. Ray finds it offensive that Norman didn't tell Gilda and Don the truth about all the kids dying and being devoured. By assigning Gilda and Don alternative spots for their escape rope, he has also placed traps for them. Emma pretends to sleep that night while observing Gilda sneak out of the bedroom. However, what Emma cannot see is that when the paper is delivered, someone slips a piece of paper under Isabella's door with the position of the rope under Norman's bed. When Gilda enters Crone's room, Emma listens in from behind the door. Things become a bit heated there because there is conflicting evidence about whether Gilda is Crone's informant or not. However, Gilda ultimately does what Emma hoped she would do and refuses to divulge any information. When Norman and Ray search the two spots where the rope was hidden, Ray says there's nothing under the bed, and Norman says that must mean Don is the traitor. Norman is now convinced that Ray was the real traitor all along, since he was the only one who knew about this place. For his part, Ray doesn't deny anything, but he does explain that he did it because it had to be done. Ray offers to cooperate with Norman as long as he does the same. However, he will only do so if the latter deceives Emma into believing they are taking everyone but Gilda and Don. Ray didn't spend years being Isabella's informant for everyone to perish in a fruitless effort to get everyone out. Later, Ray meets with Isabella and informs her that the others are still using the game of tag as practice, but Mama is focusing on Sister Crone as the main threat. Later, Ray admits to Emma that he is Mama's informant. Don and Gilda feel excluded from most of the private conversations between the other three, but Gilda and Emma begin watching Mama more intently, and Emma learns there's a secret room where she does something. Don is itching to get in there, but Ray urges caution and Norman agrees, but Don doesn't know that Connie is dead, and so he wants to escape and save her. To that end, he and Gilda enter Mama's room and revealed a secret door behind the bookshelf. In the meantime, Norman, Emma, and Ray concur that in order to survive and escape, they'll need to learn as much as they can about the outside world and how they can live there. In many books in the library, there are book blades bearing the name William Minerva and various words in Morse code. If they can decipher the order of those words, they may be able to decipher some kind of useful information that Bill is trying to covertly relay to them. It gives the children hope that there may be other people fighting the demon tyranny. As Don and Gilda delve further and further into Mama's hidden rooms, they discover stuffed animals and toys that not only lead them to believe that what Norman said about adults being bad was accurate, but also lead them to believe that something much worse is happening. Norman and Ray chastise Don and Gilda, but they are aware they don't know the full story, so Norman decides to tell him the truth. Don and Gilda assist in stealing some of the items that Ray describes in his report to Mama, outlining Norman's plan to murder her. Norman informs Emma that he is having Ray give Mom false information, so she will be ultimately diverted or otherwise distracted when they make their escape. The kids get a little too careless in their open conspiracy, and Sister Crone suddenly emerges from behind a tree to declare that she knows everything about what the five of them are planning. But to their surprise, she doesn't get angry nor threaten them. As time runs out, Ray learns that when the monthly shipment occurs in January, he will be the one being shipped out. When Emma and Norman visit Crone that evening, they ask her a number of questions, to which she replies, but they also come to the conclusion that she knows more than she lets on. Meanwhile, as payment for his help, Isabella gives Ray an instant camera. Later, Mama tells Crone that she has been chosen to be the mother for Plan 4 and must go right now. When she shows Mama her proof, the high-quality kids' escape plan, it is completely dismissed because the kids are still in control. Mama then asks the demons to kill her. Isabella calls out Ray's treachery abruptly and unexpectedly terminates. Don and Gilda see Isabella leave the house without Ray. Don rushes into the house, busts down the door, frees Ray, and the three of them head to Norman and Emma's location as quickly as they can. Mama encounters Norman and Emma and rejects their fake supplication, asking them to accept the situation as their fates. When Emma and Norman reject Isabella's ultimatum, Mama snaps Emma's knee like a twig, tenderly applies a splint, and then carries her back to the house. Later, Isabella tells horrified Norman that his shipment date has been set. Emma rejects the idea of moving forward with their escape plan without Norman instructing him to turn off his tracker with the device that Ray has just finished. The following morning, Norman makes his escape. After fastening the rope, he holds it taut as he runs up the wall and eventually manages to grab hold of the top ledge and hoist himself up. On the other side, a vast forest spreads out in all directions. If they could get everyone into that forest, it would be difficult for the adults to find them. When Mama notices that Norman is missing, she checks his tracking device and her expression makes it clear that it isn't working, but to Emma and Ray's horror, she still seemed satisfied. The truth that there is a huge, deep cliff between the wall and the forest of land they can't hope to cross was only revealed to Norman after he emerged from the forest. However, he gives them a glimmer of hope by noting that the complex of farms or plants form a hexagon, one side of which is the HQ, where there is a bridge across the cliff, but he won't be joining them and his mind will be changed. The goodbye scene for Norman is difficult. Emma, who tries to give him the tracking device breaker before they part, is the one who is suffering his approaching departure the most. Before they part, Norman gives her the tracker breaker back and encourages her to keep trying. As Norman and Mama approach the gate, she takes him into a waiting area, and that is the last time we see him. Even with encouragement from Don and Gilda, Emma and Ray don't appear to be able to move forward after losing Norman. Ray tells him he's tired and doesn't care anymore, they can do whatever they like. Both the little kids and Mama take note of Emma's persistently depressed state. As time passes and Ray's shipping arrives, Emma wakes up and finds him in the chapel. It's there that they both reveal that they've been acting around Mama, tricking her into thinking they really did give up. Ray and Emma talked about how the easiest option for them to get out is to set the house on fire. The former then showed Emma all the oil cans he had hidden over the previous few years. He then proceeded to dump oil all over himself, frightening the living daylights out of Emma, as he explained that he had been waiting for the day to commit suicide, so that Isabella could save him and allow Emma and the other orphans to flee. Ray, who is now 12 years old, started a fire at midnight. Emma hurriedly ran to Ray to rescue him. Shortly after, a loud scream could be heard. Isabella went to investigate and found Emma on the ground, desperately calling for Ray. She checked her radar and saw that Ray was indeed inside the burning fire. The former attempted to put out the fire in the hopes of still getting Ray's brain. Ray was saved as the children had wrapped the essentials of him as a decoy. Don informed Ray on how he, Gilda, and Emma had been enlisting the help of the older orphans in the escape plan. Ray recalled how Emma stopped him from burning and killing himself and slapped him. When Isabella gave Emma the order to flee, she turned around and noticed that she had already vanished. Isabella used her radar again to search for Emma, but was unsuccessful. Emma joined the other orphans in the forest. They were already set to flee because Norman had informed Emma of Ray's plot to burn himself months previously and had arranged a counterplan for her. The kids arrive at the wall's edge and are ready to scale it, but Ray notices the smaller kids are missing. In the meantime, Isabella attempts to call headquarters, but discovers the keyhole is filled. Despite this, she is able to save the transmitter as the building burns. In a flashback, Phil tells Emma that he has suspected the purpose of the farm all along and accepted that under 4-year-olds would stay in the hopes of being freed before being harvested. Isabella realizes that the children, including Ray, are alive. One young boy tugs out her skirt and she recognizes it as Phil. Isabella informs headquarters of the fire that 15 children have escaped. The children reach and climb the boundary wall. The alarm is activated as children prepare to cross the channel between the wall after Don first throws a rope across the channel. The children then start to cross to the forest using ropes and coat hangers as zip lines. Isabella runs towards the cliff and sees Emma, the last child to cross the bridge. Isabella thinks back to when she was a young child on a farm and witnessed her friends being harvested. She then started training to be a mother in order to survive. She gave birth before taking on the role of Plant 3's mother, and when she heard Ray humming a familiar song, she knew he was her son. Isabella concedes defeat and wishes the youngsters luck and cuts the ropes. She goes back to the building and informs Phil that they have made it out safely. The escapees see their first sunshine outside the farm. Thank you for seeing my channel, So Honest Some Anime Stuff. Today, The Promised Neverland Season 1. Remember to hit the like and subscribe button. That's a wrap up for today. Till then, peace out.